Ray Robinson, who is serving as your board counsel. And this afternoon, we are here for the initial meeting of the Charter Review Ad Hoc Committee as designated and by your board. At this point, we need to call to order. We have the membership. Do you call out the roll of who is here? Okay, please.
Committee Member Hartfield,
Present.
Committee Member Mechanic, Committee Member Schisler,
Here.
Committee Member Williams.
Here.
Okay, and I don't believe we have any public comment, folks that are registered here, so we can move along. At this juncture, we would need to elect a committee chair and a vice chair. Do I have any nominations to that effect?
I'll nominate a chair. I'll nominate Director Schisler for chair.
Do I hear any other nominations?
I'll nominate Director Hartfield for vice chair.
Okay, could we do, I'd rather if it would be okay if we do one at a time.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Schisler, do you accept so by acclamation of the committee members that are here, do we now elect Mr. Schisler as chair of the committee? Okay, can we, so note that in the record. The second was
sorry,
a
roll
nomination for Ms. Williams made for Mr. Hartfield for vice chair.
I'm sorry, I think she was
you
going
gonna make a
to
roll
do
call?
roll call.
Sure, we can do a roll call.
Committee, and this is for
Chair.
Committee Schisler.
Yes.
Committee Member Hartfield,
Yes.
Committee Member Schisler,
Yes.
Committee Member Williams.
Yes.
Okay, and so the second position, the second nomination was for vice chair. Do you want to repeat your nomination, Ms. Williams?
I nominated Director Hartfield, but I want to know if he's interested in the
That
position.
was going to be my question.
Yes.
Otherwise, I would perform the position if you're not interested.
I appreciate your thoughtfulness. Yes, I'd be interested in
Okay,
serving.
thank you.
Committee Member Hartfield,
Yes.
Committee Member Schisler,
Yes.
Committee Member Williams.
Yes.
Okay. At this point, Mr. Schisler, would you like to take over the agenda, or I can run through it for you?
Let's run through the process so that we have it from you as to what we're expected to do, and then I'll take over after that.
Okay. Again, Jan McLean with Gray Robinson, your board counsel. What we have had multiple discussions previously with the board and the Ad Hoc Revenue Committee on the discussion of the potential of amending your charter. And under the statute, the charter can be amended in the same manner as it was established. You also have within your charter, in the clause that specifically states what the process is for amending the charter. And let me refresh your memories. I'm hoping, yes, part of your packet was to receive a copy of the charter and the Florida Statute Section 163-570, to which I'm referring. In Article 11, which is entitled Amendments, it says that this charter may be amended by a vote of the Board of Directors that is ratified by the governing legislative bodies of each member. Upon ratification, amendments shall be filed with the Secretary of State of the State of Florida and with each member. That is also essentially the body of the statutory language. So, in effect, as I said, we are amending the charter in like manner as when it was established. Now, in the statute, because at the outset of creating the charter, it had specific components of what needed to be included in the charter, and of course, those are already in the charter. So at this point, it would be up to the committee to identify those elements of the charter that it might want to put forward to the full board for discussion to propose any revisions to those sections. And let me just say at the outset, I know that there's been some conversation with regard to the millage cap that's within the charter. I looked through the report from the FDOT with regard to any recommendations they had identified through there. So, and I know that we'd had conversations about that as well. So in my proffer of what the committee could be doing as it moves forward would be to identify those issues that you wanted to have the discussion on and what the potential revisions would be. Then myself or staff, a juncture would make those revisions for you and a strike-through underline so that you could first look at them. Or you could have that conversation back to the board and you'd be going back to the committee to make the revisions. In my mind, it would seem more efficient for the committee to identify the issues and propose those revisions to the board. But and then once the board makes the determination, then the vote would be at the board as far as what the amendments would be. If there was a packet that the board decided to move through on vote, then it would have to go to each one of the members to ratify the revisions to the charter. So that's kind of soup to nuts on how you do your amendments to your charter.
Okay, thank you very much. As I see it, and we have three areas that we need to accomplish. One is the funding opportunities. The second is any legal or operational changes that need to be made to first, as I see it, was funding options, be it millage changes or anything else that we need to incorporate in the charter. The second is legal and operational issues, which have to come from staff, presented to us for consideration and incorporation. And then lastly, or finally, is the FDOT changes. Now, I haven't gone through the entire FDOT report to figure out exactly which one it is, what items or what areas they want us to change. I felt a little cumbersome to specifically identify. So I know we, as the ad hoc committee or the ad hoc financial alternatives committee, had come up with some recommendations, and we can supply those to us to the full committee in the next meeting. But as far as legal and operational, I don't know. Would it be I think it'd be appropriate for staff to come back to us with the recommendations as to what areas need to be changed and how to change them, what verbiage needs to be amended in order to do that. Maybe not the specific I's dotted and T's crossed, but at least what general concepts need to be done. I also believe that there was some talk several months ago regarding the composition of the board. And I think we need to clarify that. And that may be you, Ms. McLean, as to how we do that, particularly with dealing with the head counts from the county and so forth. So I know that there's always been discussion about that. So I think we need to come back to this committee with that information. And then lastly, the FDOT. And I don't know who the best party would be to come up with that information. Mr. Drainville, your thoughts?
Just to clarify on the FDOT,
Well, FDOT was making I thought FDOT had made some recommendations on us to do with the chart, the modifications of the chart.
And working with Baker Consulting, they didn't really make any recommendations, so they put together scenarios. And one of the scenarios was looking at board governance and then the average size of the boards. And I believe it stated about 10 people. And then we'd have to look at the charter and revise the charter too, because the charter right now because with the population growth, the way the charter is written now, the board will just keep growing as the population grows. So definitely the staff can put something together on the recommendations. But it was the scenarios they put together, it wasn't specific recommendations.
You guys have digested the FDOT report completely, and I believe that you guys have the best working knowledge of what FDOT wants us to have. I don't know how in the world we'd ever limit reverse the size of the board, but we could probably limit it to a maximum.
I believe maybe that should be a board vote on how they want to move forward with the scenario that FDOT provided, because the board is going to need to, I guess, vote on the size of the board, and if they want to make revisions in the charter.
So we would have to take that portion of it back to the board
Right.
before we could incorporate it into
Take the
charter
scenario
revision.
that FDOT,
Okay.
and if they want to
All right, that's
modify
fair.
that scenario, then the board can modify that scenario.
Who would handle that, legal or?
Most likely, general counsel or even our internal legal can work with general counsel on just clarifying what the scenario was from FDOT study,
Okay.
and then the board can go.
Was that
from
the only major issue from FDOT?
there. Yeah, it was the funding.
Well, that's one thing.
The funding and the board governance was the two major,
Okay. The funding, I think we need to hash out ourselves so that we're all on the same page moving forward with it. Because that's going to be, to me, that's going to be the biggest roadblock to getting this done and moving forward. So I'd rather not put that to the full board until we come back with how we want to phrase it. But as far as the size of the board or any board size limitations, how long would it take us to get that before could we do it for the next board meeting? That's not pushing it.
so how often is this committee meeting?
No, Jan McLean again, we don't have a schedule set up for when this is being the initial meeting, or to put it in with the other committees, or however you would like the cycle to move forward.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to also add that as it relates to that FDOT report, I think more than board size, governance, meaning actual responsibility and oversight, and what that may have meant in the past in terms of maybe gaps as it relates to governance and how we plan to move forward. So I think size is one aspect in terms of how do we manage the size of the board going forward, but also actual oversight.
Well, to that point, are we limited by statute, Jan?
As far as the size?
No, about the oversight, about the general philosophy of the board. Is that limited by statute or by custom or what?
You're created right now through the statute and your charter that set the form of governance that you have in front of you, including the number based on population. So, but even at the outset of the statute, it indicated that the population would start with 100,000. But then as you moved into your charter and created that, it's 150,000. So the board has the ability to look at how it wants its composition.
Well, beyond that, to Mr. Hartfield's point regarding what's the word?
The form.
The mission, the goal, the mission of the board in itself, with respect to the operation of HART. Is that limited by statute, or is that limited by the charter? Or governed by the charter?
It's governed by the charter.
By the charter.
So if you're going to change your form of governance, you would have to start with your charter.
Okay, so we would need legal advice as to what we have now, are we doing it, and what we would need to change it to in order to increase or decrease or whatever.
And if I could, and it was a good clarification, I misspoke by saying it was recommendations. It was not recommendations. As Mr. Drainfield has said, it's right at the outset of the report. It speaks to governance scenarios, and it sets up the different types of governance scenarios that you could consider. But some of these would be a total change from what you have right now.
Right. I just wanted to clarify. I think we're kind of combining two conversations. The governance scenario is a separate one, and then there's board structure as two
Right.
separate things. The governance scenario, I felt like the board somewhat weighed in on that at the first meeting that said status quo for governance, which basically put to bed in some ways, I want to overspeak here, a merger, privatization, a bunch of other alternatives. I think status quo with optimization was,
Well, but that was, so, but again, those are scenarios that the board can modify. So it could be, board governance, it could be the criteria of the board, is it elected officials? Is there certain criteria that a board member has to have? So there's a lot of things we can look at to create the board, but the charter would definitely have to be opened and to revise that language, so. But don't be stuck on, I wouldn't say let's be stuck on a scenario. We can modify the scenarios to whatever, how we best feel that the board can move forward, so. Status quo meaning, when and I'm definitely biased on status quo, meaning that HART wants to remain the same agency controlling it. We're not merging with anyone. That's what I mean by status quo, so.
Okay.
And that was, Justin was absolutely accurate. Excuse me for speaking out again, but in the list of the scenarios that are in the FDOT report, let's just take it as an example. If this committee or the board wanted to consider, and this is just, one that would cause the most necessity for change, privatization of the operations, that's totally opposite to what you have right now. And so it wouldn't lend itself to just amending the charter. There would be many more things that you would have to do with regard to the governance structure of this. So in my old memory, I agree with Justin. I thought there was some conversation as far as the scenarios that had been proposed by the FDOT and in the presentations, that the board was considering staying with the status quo with optimization, if we want to go with the one that's listed in the DOT report.
Okay. In my mind, this charter hasn't been looked at since, 1980? So it's been quite a long time.
Yes.
We're not going to get this thing solved in a week or a month, or it's just going to take several months for this to happen. So I would like to chop this project up a little bit and assign it out if we could, that, the next time we meet, which, again, at Charles Lee, whenever you want to do that. But before, with Mr. Mechanic, is he going to remain on the committee, or do we know, or?
He was absent today.
He's absent today, but I understand that there was potential illness. Is he,
As far as we know right now, he's on the committee.
Yeah. as
he's
far
on the
as-
committee? Okay,
yeah,
good.
No
All right.
indication otherwise.
It'd be nice if we could get a fifth member, but I don't know if anybody can twist anybody's arms to volunteer. That would be good. But at any rate, if we could chop this up a little bit and assign some sections out to people to respond back to the committee next time we get together with some recommendations, direction, or so forth. And the first one I'd like to recommend is the actual status quo, what we want that to look like. Kick it back to the board and have it come up for a board discussion. Can we set that up as an agenda item?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be underlined under general counsel, I believe.
Yeah. Can we kick that to you, Jan, and
Yes, sir?
have Julia bring that up as an item for a future board meeting? Not necessarily the August board, but no later than September. We won't be, one will be a full board meeting, won't it?
So, yeah, there'll be 2 meetings in September. One could be potentially a full board meeting.
Maybe we need to do that, maybe for the September 9th meeting,
Okay.
okay? If so, because I think the second meeting is just in and out, no problem, just approval. I would like to take a stab at the finance portion of it, and then share that with this committee next time around. Anybody in staff that you want to assign the legal issues or any operational issues that you guys think we can put into the charter or clean up the charter to make it easier to work with.
Yeah, I can have staff get together internally
Okay.
and look at it and to go over it and see what, you know.
Yeah,
what-
now's the time to do it, because God knows when we'll get another chance to open it up. Yes,
Mr. Chair, well, maybe this is maybe too tactical, but just in, when you just mentioned, maybe we could get a fifth member. I think, where's committees? Is that in the operational aspect of governance?
I'm
and
sorry, say it again.
Committees. We don't tend to have enough people for committees and so forth. Where is all of that stuff located in the charter?
Government.
Governance. I feel like we have four
Yeah.
people, and
That's
we
it.
always seem to get a lot of feedback from the board, but not enough participation on the committees. And I feel like if you want a voice, you have to
Yes.
be involved.
That's-
And I want to make sure that people have an opportunity to participate, and that needs to be a part of the governance, that we have more people involved from a committee standpoint. So I'm not sure where that is, and how we make that happen from a charter standpoint, but we can't, we just can't operate with three
Yeah.
people on a committee. And then,
Every one of our committees has that issue. I mean,
Right.
we could go for months and not be able to get a quorum, a physical quorum down here for these committee meetings. That's happened time and time again. That's a perfect item to be addressed in this.
And if I could, you will have with the appointment of the county representative, you'll have 3 new members, the 2 gubernatorial appointees and then the county. So, and those folks were not involved when we had the first discussion at the board meeting, when you all indicated that you wanted to be a part of this committee. So that might be an opportunity if others of the new members want to be participating, you could bring that up at the board.
Could we assign that to legal?
So we can have staff send a memo out to all of the board members, see if they, again, see if they want to participate in this committee. And see who wants to be,
Well, I'm not necessarily,
I don't think it's-
not just this, it's
Right,
the whole,
just the-
every one of our committees.
so you know, it's, me and Ms. Craig have this conversation all the time. The majority, normally, all the board members are part of the committee. But I think HART is unique with so many board members, and being elected officials, the schedules conflict. So I think that's been the issue right along, is just why there's not that many members participating in the committees. So, and that was kind of, I think, my conversations with Baker Consulting is, what is the issue with the quorum? And I think, you know, is elected officials the right people to sit on the board? And that's, again, going through the board governance. So there's many reasons why we don't have a quorum, or people don't want to participate, so.
I'd like to see us, as Ms. Williams has been alluding to, we really ought to get into governance as we go through this review. And that's just one aspect. One of the issues, as Mr. Drainville just spoke to, quorum being represented on these various committees. And if we don't start to address that now with this report, it just seems like we're kind of doing the same thing and expecting different results. So I'd like to see us definitely drill down more as it relates to governance for this organization.
So who do we rely upon for that type of detailed information or
So-
recommendations?
So I was going to also, I know I see your finger pointing over at me. Doesn't that usually happen when you're not here?
Right.
But anyway, no, absolutely, of course, it would be a privilege to do that. And also, if you'll recall, there was discussion at looking at the policies. And a lot of times, I think to have the full look at governance, it would be your charter and then things that are maybe outside of your charter but within your policy. So that could be part of your discussion on governance. And
Absolutely. I like that.
Okay,
because you started today with a revision to the general counsel section. That's the first.
right,
Is there, Mr. Chair,
yes.
is there an opportunity, Mr. Drainville, for us to take a look at how we deal with our unions as well.
That's operational.
We're going to, we're going through a current issue. And is there something that should be captured as we develop governance, policy, and related structure for the organization? Is there something that we can capture now that helps us prevent these types of issues going forward? And also prevention.
I would say we definitely could put some kind of specific language where the board should not be involved in matters like this. This is the whole reason we have a CBA in place, is it's an operational matter. If we violate the contract, they have a process to grieve and arbitrate. It takes a lot of time, extra and added time on staff when we have to, do this almost like a second time. So if there was some specific language on, once a grievance, the board will have to let the grievance process play through the arbitration, and then if we could do a review on the outcome of the arbitration, but the board shouldn't be voting on, it's like the arbitrator votes one way, the board shouldn't come in and trump the decision of the arbitrator.
I think that was a great opportunity, Mr. Franklin, for us to include that.
And that might be a
Now we're getting
board
into
policy.
operational issues there now. We're getting into operational issues there. We have to be very careful. We set policy. As a board, we set policy. We don't, we say, this is what we're going to do, not how you get to there. So I think that that's a minefield trying to navigate through as to dealing with unions and so forth and any kind of CBAs. We may ultimately approve it, but we don't, it's not our jobs, we don't have the expertise, we don't have the skin in the game for it.
No, you're exactly right, and that's my point, is that our governance, as it relates to structure and policy, should actually define that the board does not have that expertise, and that we should count on our CEO and council
Oh, okay,
to
that
navigate
extent,
that.
yeah, I agree. That I agree with completely.
And that might be
Absolutely.
in the board, the HART board policy.
Policy.
Yes.
Not the charter, so.
Yes. Okay. Did you have something?
Chair, this may be a great opportunity now that we have new members and each year for us to refresh our board training, and
Yes.
just part of our normal opportunity to set aside time on a yearly basis to go over our policy
Yeah.
and charter and training. And
We all get stuck in the weeds sometimes,
Right.
and it's helpful to realign everybody,
Right.
and for new kids in the sandbox
and a
also.
refresher for
Sure, for
ourselves.
us. Yeah, I agree. Okay, any other comments, at least for this kickoff?
I did want to ask about the regional formula, where I'm not sure if this is appropriate for this committee from a financial standpoint, but from my understanding, there is some formula where Pinellas and Hillsborough, and based on the formula, we are allocated fewer dollars. And is this an opportunity for us to reevaluate this formula? Okay, you do know what I'm
Yeah,
referring
yes.
to, right?
Yeah, so if I may, Ms. Kerr can add to it, but specifically, FTA has the formula, and it's on a specific population density, revenue miles. So right now, I know Pinellas is the designee, and that was designated by the governor many years ago. So I'm having conversations with those legislators to educate them on how that split works. So I don't know when the governor, might revise the designee, but does not allow, we can do, because it's almost 50-50 now. We have the streetcar, which adds 1%, but we don't really have any control. We approve it or disapprove, but we don't change the formula and how that funding is split. Ms. Kerr, did you want to add anything?
I think you've said it all.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's been changing through the years. I mean, it gets recalculated every year or every few years by FTA, or has this been static for?
The split is calculated every year
Every
in
year.
terms
But
of
we've been
the formula
gaining- We've been
funds.
gaining since I've been on.
Yeah.
on
Depends
HART.
on changing population density
Sure.
and the factors.
Okay,
We're almost on parity, but not
Right.
quite, but almost.
okay, thank you. I just had that as a note.
No, that's fine, that's fine. Any other comments or questions by staff? Okay, so, September meeting or late August, when do we want to meet? How do we want to,
So do we have
you guys are busy with budgets and so
yeah,
forth.
so the committee, there's no committee in September
For anybody?
for anything, yeah. We have one committee in
How
August.
much time do you guys need to start putting stuff together?
Well, if we, Jan McLean again, so if we don't have, and I'm sorry that I don't know this, because I should, we don't have committee meetings in September at all?
No, there's 2 public hearings in September.
Okay, that's right. So then the opportunity is either put it with the other committee meetings in August or October, if you're going to keep them wed to the committee meeting day, or unless you're going to do something differently.
What's your druthers? I don't care. I've got 3 meetings that day anyway, so it's,
I like to rely on getting quality information.
Yes.
Back, and what time, the time you need in order to provide the information, so.
So I would say, I mean, if time isn't of the essence, so maybe we bring it back to the October meetings, because the charter, correct me if I'm wrong, when you have to go to referendum to be opened, I mean, if it gets through the cities and the county, then would that have to go, how would that work after that?
That would, excuse me, that would only be with regard to the millage changes.
Okay.
You can make other changes to your charter
At
that
any
are.
time.
Wait,
At
okay.
any time.
wait a minute.
Sorry.
The charter review process only goes to never really goes to referendum on the charter. Only if the
Only.
charter, let me start over. Let's say, in my mind, the scenario is, we come up with some changes, okay? One of them being a millage issue. It goes to the member boards, City of Tampa, City of Temple Terrace, Hillsborough County, and obviously HART. If the majority of the members approve it, then the charter gets filed with the state of Florida. If the change if then the board votes a change in the ad valorem rate, then it has to go to the Board of County Commissioners, then referendum. Is that a true?
Right. You have to, yes, you have to change your charter first.
Right,
and-
but
and
the
then you
charter
have to-
change doesn't require referendum vote.
Referendum, correct.
Okay, that's
That's
what
what I
I,
was trying to say.
that's how I understood.
So then to clarify, I think maybe we should go to, bring it back to October committee for November board. So we should have enough information, because we're still going through the budget process and staff's taking up a lot of time. with
Yeah,
the
no, I
budget.
realize
So,
that, I realize that.
Fiscal year starts October, we'll bring it back to, we'll have a committee meeting in October and then bring it to the November board. My recommendation.
Bring it to the board in November?
No, yeah, November.
Yeah.
So we do committee, we'd have all information, we can work through the committee on the information we want to bring back to the board and let the board deliberate on whatever we bring to them.
Okay, but in the interim, we have the information we need to put together. Could we bring that back to October?
Yes,
Okay.
October committee, and then
October
we
committee.
discuss it as a committee.
Now, will we be able to do the status quo portion of it to the board in September?
September? We could have an informational presentation to.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we
So
could do
So
that.
that the board could give us direction on what they want to do as far as how they want to define status quo, i.e. size and stuff like this.
Yeah, we could do that.
Does that seem reasonable to everybody?
Well, so if we bring it back to, so just to clarify, we're bringing it, so you want to go to September board? Because we were going to bring this back.
Now, we're only talking about the FDOT recommendations so far as size and so forth. Do we want to limit it, how we limit it, and for that? Remember we talked about going back to the board for what their preference was in that.
I personally think we should sit as a committee, discuss it as the committee in October, and then bring it to November board and let the
Okay,
board direct
that's
us
fair.
on how
That's
we
fair.
want to go forward.
All right, that gives you guys enough time to figure out who's on first and who's on second.
Yeah, just to clarify, so We've been down this road before.
I know, I'm sure.
One-on-one calls. Any change to the charter must be approved by a majority of the members. The members are the city of Tampa, the city of Temple Terrace, and Hillsborough County.
Yes, of the board. And then, so then it
Our
goes,
board, and then those three members.
and then each of those members have to ratify the changes at their governing boards.
Right. In order for a millage to be proposed, which is not the main focus of this exercise, but is part of the conversation, the county is the ultimate approver of that getting on the ballot.
That's the initial, yes.
Correct. Okay.
But you could change the charter, you could change the millage cap in the charter without imposing it. It could just sit there, and then
Yes.
that would be your cap. So you could change your charter without having to trigger those.
So we can change our charter and the cap of the millage without it going to referendum until the Board of County Commissioner allows that? Is that what you're saying?
The county would be, any changes to the charter would have to go back to the members. And so it's kind of a distinction without, so it's going to go to the county. If the county doesn't want to approve the change in the millage cap, then that change in the charter would not go forward.
I understood it to be a majority of the members,
You understood what to be a
the
majority
charter change.
of the board for it.
No, the chart, you got four members. We got four members. We need a
Three.
majority. Well, technically, you've got the HART, you count the HART board in that?
Oh,
Okay, technically, you have four members, so we do get probably past the HART board, it's moot. But of the three members, we got Tampa, Temple Terrace, and Hillsborough County. According to what I read under the thing, it was a majority of them. Required.
for the proposed revisions to the charter.
Correct, okay? Now,
Which would be an increase in our cap rate in the charter.
That would be potentially part of the revisions.
but to actually make the change, it would require a referendum vote. To make the millage change would require a referendum vote by the population.
First, you have to make the change to the charters.
Right.
Stop me if I'm wrong. I feel like we've gone, first you have to make the change to your charter. That would be your board decision.
Correct.
Then those, and which may or may not include the change in the millage cap, because there's other things that you could
Correct.
change. Okay.
Correct.
Once those changes, it would go to your members for ratification. Under the statute, the county can say whether it's going to allow the increase in the millage. And before the millage can be imposed, it has to go to referendum.
The millage cap or the millage rate? We're going to, we just did
The
we
millage
just
rate.
did, huh?
The millage rate, the millage cap would be in the charter,
Okay, but that can be done without going to referendum. The
correct?
cap can be changed without going to referendum.
Correct.
To actually make that change would require a referendum vote?
To actually impose
Impose, I'm
whatever your
sorry,
rate
yes.
would be, would require the referendum.
That's an important distinction.
But once that's made, does that have to be made every time? Say we did a half a mil one year, and let's say, for example, we did a cap of 1 mil instead of a half. We're at half a mil now, right? Suppose you took it to 1 mil, and the first year we decide to take it to 0.75 in the actual rate. Would we be required to go to referendum for the 0.75, and then any time after that to take it up to the 1? Or when, I guess I'm confused when it actually goes to referendum now.
The voters would have to approve the maximum millage,
Thank you, yeah.
and then the rollback rate could be used at any time by the governing body, right? That would be subject
We could
to
flop up and
annual
down.
approval.
Okay.
But the maximum millage is set by whatever the outcome would be by the voters.
So then any referendum change, any charter change that we make now that has any kind of cap change has to go to referendum.
For it to be applied.
For it to be imposed. I mean, you could change in my understanding of it, you could change your cap in the charter. Right now, it's half, and you could move it to 1. But if you continue to impose half, then nothing's changed on the voters. So for you to increase it, you would have to have that referendum.
I hear what you're saying, but it doesn't, it's not intuitive to me on that. Okay, I defer to your judgment. Okay, so our next meeting is going to be in November, correct? As this committee.
October committee.
October committee. And when are we going to discuss the size with the general board?
So we would bring that to the committee as this group, discuss that, and then figure out what we want to take to the board in November.
Okay, all right, sounds good. All right, and in the meantime, we'll have some, I'll get with Justin and Ms. Kirk about some cap numbers and bring that back for finance. And then you're going to come back with legal questions, legal issues that you see with the charter. And you guys will come back with any operational issues with the charter. And we'll have that for the October meeting.
Correct.
Is that reasonable?
Reasonable.
I think it was governance.
Pardon me? I mean, governance.
Governance.
Yeah, I'm sorry, governance. Okay, we all kind of in the same page with this? Since it hasn't happened since 1980, we're kind of bumping blindly into walls, so until we get our feet wet. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Drainsville, do we have identified aspirational agencies in the state or outside of the state that we'd like to aspire to be like? And I ask with the thought of securing maybe their charter agreements as well as maybe policies as it relates to governance as well.
Well, I
To
can say,
benchmark.
if you read through the study, the majority of the transit agencies that are categorized as us, as a lone entity, has all dedicated funding, whether it's from a surtax, a gas tax, just about all of them. None of them run on specific, generating their own revenues to do that. So, and that states that right in the FDOT study. There's some kind of special taxing district, surtax. So really, we just want to get to be like any other agency that has a special tax. Well, I shouldn't say that that's what we want to do, but I'm just saying that's what most agencies do. There's not many that, have any specific, like there's been talk about the city having their own ad valorem, but that hasn't been done in the whole state of Florida. So if that was the case, then we would have to go to Tallahassee. The city would have to be on board, getting their own ad valorem specifically to fund this agency. And that hasn't happened in the state of Florida yet, so that would be a first. So there's different options.
I think what you're talking about is just as a general document, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I mean, we can provide many documents from many places.
See if there's
that-
anything we're missing.
Right, well, yeah, we'll definitely look through the other charters and see, definitely, before we come back to the board, we will do that, so.
Okay, cool. All right, good. Anybody think we missed anything?
I think the other point that I just thought of when you brought that up, Mr. Hartfield, was how did they get there?
What do you mean?
How did they get to a tax? Just a,
So
Special
normally,
tax.
so I know in my experience, say in the state of Rhode Island, there was a gas tax that specifically funded more than just the transit agency. So the transit, you got a half cent. And DOT got, a big bucket, and there was almost just exactly how the surtax was passed here. There was buckets, and public transit got a percentage of that tax. So it wasn't a tax for transit, but we were part of that tax, and so we got that half cent, which does go a long way when it comes to the funding of the transit agency. So majority of the places don't have unless it's a special taxing district specifically for transit, it's usually incorporated in a bigger tax.
and just to keep that thought going, how did they get their constituents, their community to buy in? That's not a question you have to answer now, but how did they go about making that happen?
I think it's, the board uses influence with the community and the different groups, the Downtown Partnership, the Chamber, And then we specifically, in our case, we have many of our board members are county commissioners that make a lot of decisions, right? So those groups would go to the county and lobby for the transit agency. Not necessarily us as the transit agency lobbying for ourselves, but a lot of times the board is, elected officials have influence, and they take it to their groups, and then they bring their groups to county commission meetings or city council meetings and advocate for the transit agency. That's how they kind of keep people, they don't forget about the transit agency.
Then maybe there's a bipartisan appetite for something, special taxing district or something that's palatable in this hypersensitive political environment that we're in. But maybe there's something that's palatable or something that we could start working on.
I'll leave that conversation with one comment. We had that once, it was approved by 57% of the voters, and that money could have leveraged almost $1 billion for HART. Must have been.
Unfortunately, I wasn't around to understand all the dynamics there. But we had a county commissioner that took that to task all the way to the Florida Supreme Court. So there was something that we missed.
Oh, yeah. It's
Something that
verbiage.
we missed, because even with the dollars being sent back to the county, we had a very small fraction of that.
We got nothing.
So that was, so I'm looking for, and Gil, you're absolutely right, we did have it, but how do we get to a place where we can raise the necessary funds for this organization and we not be sued and it get back to the Florida Supreme Court and end up in the same position? I'd like to get to that answer.
Oh,
Yeah.
ditto. Yeah, that was a semantic issue and the way the referendum was written. And it was strictly excluded the county commission in the allocation of the funding. Had that been done properly, we wouldn't be sitting here with this issue.
So that's the key word. How do we do it properly?
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed.
That was my question. How did they do it? How do we do it? But we have to find a solution, and the answer isn't near or long-term, or we have to be successful. And we want to do it, and we need more than 3 people and a staff
Yeah,
to make that happen.
but it's got to start somewhere.
Right,
And
exactly.
it can't start till we get the charter reviewed.
That's correct.
Charter revised. It's never going to
Today's-
happen until we do that.
That's right.
So that's why we're doing it this way.
I was just gonna say that it's different every single place, right? Like, one of the examples, our previous board members, county commissioners would say is that we're the only county that doesn't have any dedicated revenue, general revenue allocated to transit. We don't have any gas tax, local option gas tax dedicated to transit. So some of the potential buckets out there outside of ad valorem are still available. So we can entertain those as we move forward without having to go through our charter to do it. The city could pass a millage at the local level and decide they want to spend some of that money on transit. We're working with the city to come up with routes that are city-specific for them to fund. The circulator is an example, a small example of that. But there are local option gas taxes. Of course, a lot of those flow through the county commission, just like our ad valorem. But as part of a broader transportation picture, I think is part of the solution that got the 2018 tax over the line. But there are more options than just going through our ad valorem. The sales tax was a great one, and it was the best one for charging tourists, I might add. That's just a point of fact. But we can work on other avenues and not have to put all our eggs in the ad valorem basket. But there are other mechanisms to do that, but it just hasn't been done here for transit. And the last thing I'll say is there's also a special assessment for the streetcar, which we all know. So maybe there's an appetite to focus on a few corridors in the city, and we could put forward a service plan for high-frequency corridors that potentially could explore a special assessment through city council and the mayor. So there are other opportunities. I'm sorry, I probably spoke too much already.
I think those are great options if we were to get a list of how it's done, how they have accomplished it in other areas outside of the ad valorem. It would be, I mean, we're grocery listing it now, but.
Right,
if we-
exactly.
And
Thank
I
you,
think we
Justin.
pulled some of that for part of our previous work.
That'll
So
be
we've
part
got
of
a
our
good-
presentation towards, for that portion of it.
Yeah, and InfraStrategies also had a really good slide on those potential sources. I remember from about a year ago, I think.
Yes. Okay, so we'll meet again. Catherine, you'll pick a date in November, I'm sorry, in October? Okay, all right. Any other business come before this committee? Excellent, stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody. You and a whole
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website,